It is Dr Amit Patel.
Obviously, 2 days later, they unbandaged the eyes and I couldn't see a thing. I completely lost my sight. It was very much like a light switch, being flicked on and off. It's, that was the end of my career. It was the last day of my job.
In those 3 months, were you thinking about things like, do I still want to have children?
No, those 3 months in my head was very much, how do I get back on my feet again? Why do I have to go through this? What have I done so wrong in my life that I have to go through all of this pain? My dad said, because you can get through this, Emma. So I thought, do you know what? Social media is good for this. So I took a little photo and I said, people help me. Is there poo in the bath or isn't there poo in the bath? And people are like,
wow.
There's poo in the bath. There's poo in the bath. They're nice trainers. I pay for those. I'm like, what do you mean? Being blind, you live on benefits. You must have your house paid for. I'm like, well, I have a mortgage like everybody else. And I have to work like everybody else.
Absolutely awful.
My life has never, ever been this good. I feel the best I've ever felt.
Welcome to the Dadvengers podcast, sponsored by Tonka, because being tough is all about getting out and playing. I'm Nigel Clark, TV presenter and performer, and I'm also host of this wonderful podcast where we explore different aspects of parenting and hone in on the dad point of view. And mums, grandparents, carers, we want you involved in the conversation too. So let's talk, let's laugh, let's share the things we find difficult and become the type of dads we really want to be. Today I am joined by a disability rights activist and doctor. As a father of two, today's guest has had to learn to parent with a disability after losing his sight before his children were born. And if that wasn't enough, he's also written a book about his experience. I'm pleased to introduce to you another amazing Dadvenger. It is Dr Amit Patel.
Hi, Nigel.
Hey, Dr Amit, it's great to have you here. I'm so pleased that you could join us.
Been looking forward to this. Talking about kids, I can do it all day long.
And you have two kids, don't you? What are their names?
Okay, so we have Abhishek, who is 4.5, who thinks he's about 15 years old. And then we have Anushka, who's 20 months old, but she thinks she's I think she thinks she's about 10 years old. She's way too independent for my liking.
Girls get like that sometimes, I find. My daughter Sienna is the same. Very, very independent from an early age.
Having a boy and a girl, my son was very relaxed growing up. When he was a toddler, he's like, "Oh, just carry me. I'm too tired. I can't be bothered doing this." When my daughter's the opposite, she's like, "No, don't carry me. I'm running, I'm jumping. I'm now climbing all over the furniture." So it's it's a fun time.
Yeah. Now, Anushka being 20 months, that means she was about, 6 months when we started lockdown?
Yeah. So she really hasn't been out and about as much, obviously, as my son has. Even now, even when we take a little walk and she hears the sirens of a police car or an ambulance, she literally grabs my legs with all her might and just squeezes, because she's just not used to it. Or if she sees a crowd of people walking towards us, Kiki, my guide, will kind of just move out the way slightly because she kind of hogs the curb. And Anushka would just freak out. She just, a mass of people she's just not used to. So it's very, very different. But slowly, she's kind of getting used to it. Back at nursery a few days a week now. She's seeing a lot more people. Her confidence is building up, but she's definitely a lot slower when we're out and about than she is kind of running around in the garden or the house or anything. She's very conscious that there's people around, there's noises around, and it kind of freaks her out slightly.
That's very, very interesting. And I'm going to come back to touch upon that a little bit later. But first, let's find out a little bit more about your situation. Now, you lost your sight 1 year into your marriage. Is that right?
Yeah, it's I've always had an eye condition. I have a condition called keratoconus, and it's where the corneas kind of protrude out of your eye slightly, and they kind of become very much like pyramids kind of coming out of your eye. So it means that the light can't hit the back of your retinas correctly.
Is that basically right in front of the pupil, the clear bit in front of it?
It's the windscreen of your eye, basically. It's that clear membrane you have that protects your eyes. So that kind of droops and kind of goes a bit saggy and then kind of falls out of your eye, but it's still attached in a weird way. It's a condition that's usually picked up by opticians when you go and get your eyes checked. I always wore glasses from a young age, but I had no issues with my corneas at that time. It was only at university I started getting headaches. I couldn't quite see the text on my books clearly. And that's when it was diagnosed that this is the condition I had. So for a few years, we had little glass lenses kind of fixed to my eyes to kind of push the corneas back, just to kind of give it the pressure. And every evening I'll take them out. It got to a stage where I had these big lenses, which were very much like mini pasta bowls, which had a big kind of void in the bottom of them where you have to fill them up with liquid and then pop them into your eye without losing any of the liquid. And they'll sit on there all day long. But by the end of my shift at hospital, when I was working, you'd see this kind of tide line on there because the liquid would evaporate and kind of disappear.
Oh, wow.
And it would look like my eyes were behind like some behind a fish tank, I guess. But for a few years, kind of wore those, got used to it, and then had to have a transplant. So basically you take off my corneas and have a transplant of someone else's cornea, and they're stitched on into the eye. And I had quite a few of those procedures, but we never really thought about sight loss. We might think that, I might lose a little bit of my vision. We correct them with lenses and glasses on top. Never really thought that I would ever lose my sight. So when I did fall in love and get married, seeing my wife knew all about the transplants and everything, but we never really spoke about sight loss. We always said, well, if this happens again, we always have to make sure there's enough money in the bank to kind of have a procedure, because it was at that stage there's nothing else we could do in the UK, so it would have had to been abroad. But never really spoke about if I'd ever lose my sight.
And then it literally happened overnight.
Yeah, it was a late evening from work. Drove back from London. We lived in Guildford and Surrey at the time. Drove back, had dinner with Seema, and this was about 11 o'clock. Had dinner with Seema. She went off to bed. I catched up with a bit of paperwork, watched a bit of TV, listened to some radio, went to bed. Woke up the next morning to kind of feel grittiness in my eyes. And having so many corneal transplants, I'm kind of used to it. I thought, go into the bathroom, splash a bit of water on my face, clean out the grit. It was only when Seema noticed the blood on the pillow that we actually realized something serious was wrong. And even after washing my eyes, nothing really cleared it up. So it was a rush to the hospital, where they said there's too much blood around the eyes to actually be able to know what's wrong. So they bandaged them up, and they said, we'll give it a couple of days, take the bandages off, and then we'll go from there. Obviously, 2 days later, they unbandaged the eyes, and I couldn't see a thing. I completely lost my sight, because what had happened is they believe that a little blood vessel had popped in the back of my eyes, and it literally just set off the fireworks, and that was it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But that must have been such a scary time.
Yeah, it was. Do you know what it was? I think a little bit of adrenaline, a bit of fear. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. Obviously, being a doctor, in the back of my head, I kind of knew that I don't think I'd ever get my sight back. But then you kind of want to hold on to something. You kind of want to, well, I thought, if it went so quickly, we might be able to get it back, or might be able to get partial sight back. I don't think I ever wanted to think about me being blind for the rest of my life. Because at that time, just being married, just weeks before, Seema and I were talking about where we wanted to kind of set up our home, where we wanted to move and start a family, and where we wanted to visit before we had kids. And all these conversations are only weeks old. And then now, obviously, life had just turned upside down. So it was a very difficult time. But I guess for me, it was, I guess, I'm so used to people coming to me for help. And then having to rely on others, especially something so serious like sight loss. It's not as if I can go and do some research or go and check what's around, or get in the car and drive to see a consultant. I had to rely on others, and that was very much the hard part for me.
It's a total shift, isn't it, in your independence? It's from one extreme straight to the other with nothing in between.
It was very much like a light switch, being flicked on and off. It's, that was the end of my career. It was the last day of my job was the day I got back. It was so many. It was always thoughts in my head. Am I ever going to remember what my family, my wife, anybody looked like? Am I, if I had an idea that I was going to lose my sight, I would have, I would have a game plan, I guess. I'd know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, who I needed to contact. But being so sudden, that's what was the hard part, I guess. It was not being able to prepare for it. Um, and then having to deal with all the consequences of being sight, having sight and losing it. And now, what do we do? We went from a 2-income household to a 1-income household overnight.
Right.
Seema still had to work. Seema still had to go into London every day to go to work, and I had to start living a life without sight. And kind of, I guess it was frightening, because everything you do with sight, with even, you do things without thinking about it. People joke about, oh, I could do this with my eyes closed. But for me, that was reality. Now I would have to remember where things were, where I left things, where the stairs were in the house, where to find the bathroom door, all these kind of things. But on top of that, I was on so much medication that my fingers were numb, my feet were numb. So even taking steps, I wasn't quite sure whether I'd planted my foot on the floor or not. So I'd fall over, I'd fall down the stairs. And you think, well, and then you're angry with yourself, because to me, it's like, well, I know the layout of my house, but why can't I get around? And then, all that anger kind of builds up to frustration, and it just creates more anger. And then you just don't know where to go, who to turn to, what to say. And for me, I shut down completely. I'm, as you can tell, a very chatty person, but for about 3 months in my house, I don't think I said a word, because I wasn't sure what to say or what to do.
I can even now feel the emotion in your voice of just going back and remembering it and feeling it. And yeah, I cannot imagine. You mentioned that you were in an early stage in your relationship with Seema, and you were planning about having families and all of that. Did your plans for family change? You said you didn't talk for 3 months. In those 3 months, were you thinking about things like, do I still want to have children?
No, I think those 3 months in my head was very much, how do I get back on my feet again? It was that whole thing where I would have to look after myself, and before I could even think about anything else. I'm very, I'm very lucky. I have an amazing wife. See, all the burdens fell on Seema. She had to find the resources. She had to figure out, is Amit okay? I could barely tell if it was day or night or anything at all. It was just, I was in my own little world, just trying to kind of get to grips with my sight loss. And Seema had to pick up all the pieces around that. And also the thoughts in my head, like, well, if Seema goes, I wouldn't blame her, because all this is, she didn't sign up for any of this. And the weird thing is, random people would just say, oh, Seema, poor you're gonna have to look after Amit for the rest of his life. You married a doctor, now you're gonna have to look after him. But Seema, to her credit, would say, well, no, I married Amit. I didn't marry a doctor. I married Amit's in there. This is nobody could have predicted this. Nobody could have predicted this in the future. This would happen. But you know what? I believe in Amit, and Amit will get through this. When he does get through this, we'll carry on. And she always had that hope. And even when I lost that, when I completely lost all faith that I would be able to get back on my feet again, she would always have her arms around me and say, no, don't worry, Amit. You'll get there, and it just takes time. And she always said to me that, it's like when you accept it, when you get to that stage where you're ready to move forward, I'm here for you. And you kind of hold on to these little things. But the one thing that really changed it for me is, she was at work one day, and I was at home, and my dad popped round, and my dad, we're having a cup of tea, and all these months, I would never cry in front of my dad. I wouldn't tell him just how much pain I was in, because my eyes feel like someone's rubbing chili powder in them 24/7. And even right now, that's how it is. And I deal with that every single day. But at the beginning, obviously, it was really intense. My eyes were constantly streaming with blood. They looked like cat's eyes. There was no structure to my eyes whatsoever. And I was having a cup of tea, trying to kind of keep a smile on my face. And I completely broke down in front of my dad. And my dad came over to me, and he put his arms around me, and I said, Dad, why is this? Why do I have to go through this? What have I done so wrong in my life that I have to go through all of this pain? And my dad said, because you can get through this, Emmett. That's it. He said, like everything in life, you focus on something and you achieve it. If you fall down, you get back up again. And he said, this is just it. This is what you've been working towards all these years, and we all have faith in you, but you've got to do this. by yourself. You've got to get to that stage in your life where you're ready to move forward. And that point in my life is when I needed to hear my dad say that to me. And it's that father-son thing where what he said was so true. Everything, the way I was brought up, and me and my brother brought up, is very much, you are your own person. You do what you want to do in life. We're here to help you, but we're not going to give you anything. And everything that I worked up towards was that point. And I thought, do you know what? This is so true. This is something I really just needed to hear. And I think I had my guard down. So it wasn't something that bounced off me. It's something that actually I listened to. And I thought, I want to get better. I want to be able to make the best of my life, even with sight loss. So even thinking about kids wasn't an option then. It was very much just get back on your feet again and go from there.
Wow. You speak about your father so well. Had you always had that close relationship with him?
Yeah, do you know what? My dad is such a character. He knows I have no attention span for anything whatsoever, unless I enjoy what I'm doing. There's no way anybody can say, Amit, do this, and I will do it, because if I don't enjoy it, I won't. It just doesn't work. But my parents are very much just let us be who we wanted to be. We were never pushed into anything. It was, if you don't give it a go, you're never going to know if you like it or not. And whatever you have in life, you have to work hard for, then it's the only way you're going to appreciate it. Looking back at that now, that's what I want to be. My parents are very much that kind of focus I have, and the type of parent I want to be. It's easy enough to give your kids things, but I want my son to make the mistakes. I want him to appreciate, he has to work hard to get something and not just be given things when he wants it. But it's hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah, it must be. It must be very hard to do. But you've had to adapt to so much in maybe a short space of time, and you've done so well with that. I don't think that adapting to being a parent would have been too much of a struggle for you. And speaking of that, how have you had to adapt as a parent?
Do you know what? When we found out we were expecting our first child, it was kind of out the blue, because we weren't planning to have kids. It just happened because we were at the right time in our life, I guess. We were kind of happy. I think.
Surprise! You're pregnant.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think we got to a stage where it was, Seema was very much focused on me for a long time. Even when she'd go to work, she's, how's Amit doing? I hope Amit's coping okay. I'm out and about with my white cane. I hope he's not lost. You should get the odd phone call here and there saying, I think I'm here. Can you have a look on your GPS map to see where I am on your, and she'll say, oh, you're a good mile away from where you think you are. And, all this kind of, so she's constantly worrying. Then Kiki obviously came along, my guide dog, and she kind of gave me the confidence and that independence to kind of be out and Seema stopped worrying. And we kind of went from thinking about sight loss all the time to being a couple again in a nice way. Sight loss was there, but it wasn't the first thing you think about. We were back. I think we kind of got back to that kind of first year of being married again. A few years later, we were happy. We were so happy. So when Seema said, we're expecting, it wasn't, oh my God, what do we do? It was actually joy. It was actually proper
Good
joy, just to think, oh my God, we can do this, and I remember sitting down with Seema, we're having a cup of tea, and I kind of got the little shakes going on because I don't think I've been that happy ever. And I said, look, if I'm going to be a father, I want to be the best father I could possibly be. And I'm kind of holding Seema's hand saying this, and I'm like, whatever it takes, whatever we have to do, I want to be hands-on. I don't want to listen to you kind of doing all the things. I want to do everything every other father dreams of doing, apart from obviously teaching my kids how to drive, but one day, maybe, who knows. But it was I want to do nappy change. I want to make the formulas. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to change the baby. I want to take it out. And Seema's like, yeah, well, I don't expect less of you. This is what this is what you're going to do regardless.
That's what you got to do, mate, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And I think it was her belief in me that, oh yeah, well, you can do this. Why can't you do this? That kind of made it even more exciting.
We are so happy to have Tonka as our sponsor this series. Basic Fun's Tonka collection is packed full of fun vehicles for kids who want to get out and get tough with their toys. So dads, you've got no excuse. Grab that mighty steel classic truck. It's time to head to the sandpit for some tough play. Now, to give us a little bit of insight into some of the changes you had to make, can you tell me about some of the funny moments that have happened? Like, because changing a nappy as a man, you're going to get some moments, or, you know, there's lots of different things. There's pseudo-creme moments. There's all sorts of moments. But I want to know for you, as a father, I want to know some of the funny or interesting moments that might have happened to you that may never have happened to us.
The one thing you don't prepare for with a boy is when he wheezes, when you've taken the nappy off and you think, oh, okay, so you're having a bit of a playtime. Oh, hello, Abby, how are you doing? And then you just kind of feel this warm liquid just all over your front. And you kind of think, oh my gosh, what's going on? You realize that you should have put your hand just in front of, all these little things. But I think the worst thing was I think when we were getting him into pants, kind of potty training him. He would walk around in the living room and say, Daddy, I've just had a poo-poo. And I'm like, okay. So I'd kind of go in there thinking it's time to change him. But I've taken it off. I'm like, what? You taking what off? Nappy off. I'm like, what do you mean you're taking it off? Off. And then he walks over to me and I can feel that he's got nothing on. And then I'm on my hands and knees trying to find this nappy, which is the worst thing in the world. But I think the funniest moment was when I was giving him a bath one day, and I kind of heard the bubbles, and I'm like, okay, a bit of wind, and then he's like, poo-poo, poo-poo, and I'm like, literally, he's in the bubble bath, and he told me he's just done a poo-poo, so I'm literally just grabbed and lifted him up. I'm like, how do I clean this, or how do I know what's going on? So I thought, do you know what, social media is good for this. So I took a little photo and I said, people help me, is there poo in the bath or isn't there poo in the bath? And people are like, wow. There's poo in the bath, there's poo in the bath. And so I had to go downstairs, get like a sieve from the kitchen or the play area, wherever it was, and literally scoop it out. I'm like, am I doing it right? And people are like on social media, yeah, it's to the left, damn it, it's to the left. I've got one baby in my hand, I've got the sieve in the other hand, trying to scoop up. Oh my, yeah. So there's challenges, but it's all part of life, right? It's kind of, if that's all I've had to deal with.
Yeah.
I think I've been quite lucky.
The fact that you can laugh at it, the fact that you can, because some people might have panicked in that situation and not gone to social media. They may have been just at home trying to deal with it and not had a good time. But you embraced it, took it to social media and dealt with the matter.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it would have been FaceTime to Seema at work. And she'll probably be in a meeting going, yeah, the poo's to the left, damn it. And her colleagues are so used to me just FaceTiming randomly saying, where's the baby? Where's the baby gone? Because what we would do, obviously, I could never hear where Abby was, even if it was crawling. So he would wear little purse bells. So every time he would walk around, it would kind of jingle. When it stops making the noise, that's when I get worried because he stopped somewhere. Where is he? And sometimes he just wouldn't make any noise for a while. And I'm like, Kika, find Abby. And Kika will go, no, I'm going to bed, So I'd be on my hands and knees trying to find the baby and he'll be sat on the sofa or something. So that's when FaceTime kind of comes out and I'm like, where's the baby, Seema? Where's the baby?
You mentioned something there that really pricked my ears up. So you said to Kika, your guide dog, find the baby, and Kika decided no. Wait, hold on. Aren't guide dogs always on duty?
That's it. When her harness goes on, she's in work mode. She's like she's an amazing guy. When the harness comes off, she's a crazy blonde Labrador who for us, luckily she gets on with the kids. She let the kids ride her like a horse. But there gets to a point where she just needs her time. She needs Kika time. And that's when, Abby's either sleeping or Anushka's sleeping and she'll kind of go off to her bed. She kind of helps me look after Abby and Anushka when we're on our own. But she obviously needs her time. So, the two of them are thick as thieves most of the time. But when she needs her time, she's off. She's gone. She's bolted. And she's like, no, Daddy, you sort it out yourself. But yeah, she's a funny character.
Oh, she's the fifth family member and probably the most essential family member.
Yeah, she was a practice, I think, for having a kid because, it was just me and Seema for a while. And then when Kika came along, it was very much, Kika's the first thing you think about in the morning and the last thing you think about at night. She was a very touchy-feely dog. She needed someone with her all the time. And obviously she was with me most of the day. She was out and about with me. So for me, it wasn't that she was a pet. She wasn't a guide dog. She was a member of the family. I talk to her like I talk to our kids. I say thank you, goodbye, how are you to Kika, and all, and I think my parents and Seema's parents saw Kika as the first grandchild. In a funny way, Kika came to us when she was 18 months old, and the funny thing is that Kika was named at birth. All of Kika's litter were the K litter, so her siblings are Kika, Cola, Cuba, apart from one which was called Bo, who was a sponsored dog. But the rest of all the litters are all Ks. And Kika happens to be my mother-in-law's maiden name. And Kika is the only Kika and guide dog. So Seema's cousins on her mum's side are all Kikas. Same spelling as well. And Kika was actually born 2 weeks before I lost my sight. So as I was learning to be a blind person, I guess, and live my life as a visually impaired person, Kika was going through guide dog training. So, it was meant to be.
You mentioned something earlier that I wanted to come back to, and you said Anushka, because she's grown up in the pandemic, that she's a bit more wary when she goes outside and things like that. Do you think growing up that she's noticed that Kika, when Kika's outside with you, Kika goes into a different mode, and so she goes into a different mode as well? Like it's a family knowledge or a family thing that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's watching her brother, because when I would say let's go for a walk, Abby would go and get his trainers on, get his coats on, and then he'll bring Kika's lead and harness over, and I would harness them up. And Anushka, obviously Kika walks on my left hand side, so it's only my right hand which is free. So Abby would he walks by himself now, but Anushka would always run round and grab my right hand. And I think she knows that even when we're out and about, she doesn't distract Kika, which is quite funny, because the two of them are probably closer than Abby was with Kika. I think it's purely because we've been in the house all the time. With Abby, Kika would be working quite a lot, and he'd be at nursery or at school or whatever it was. But with Anushka, we've been in that kind of closeness for a year now, and Kika's always been there. So Anushka's safe place is Kika's bed. When I tell her off, when she's done something naughty and I've told her off, she would go and run into Kika's bed and she would hug Kika.
I want to delve a little bit back now into your parents and the way you were brought up. Your parents moved to the UK from India, right?
Yeah. So
you laugh. Go on.
Yeah, my mum's a proper character here. My parents moved to Croydon from Mumbai, and for a year or so, my mum and dad living in Croydon, and it's where a huge part of the Gujarati community kind of moved to and kind of settled, I guess. And after about a year or so, my mum said to my dad, "It's Croydon's full of Asians. It's barely we're supposed to be in the United Kingdom. It feels like everybody from Mumbai has kind of come across with us, and it doesn't feel like we're in England." And my mum said to my dad, "Look, I'll give you an ultimatum. It's either we move out of Croydon or we move back to Mumbai." So at that time, my dad was working for the MOD, and we transferred to he got moved to Guildford in Surrey, where now we're the only brown people in the village. But my mum was very much, well, look, we moved here, and I was about 3 years old when we did the move, so very, very young. And my mum always said to me, "Look, we moved to England for a better life. And we're practicing Hindus, but we live in a Christian country. And I want you to have the best of both worlds. I want you to understand where you live, but I don't want you to ever forget, your culture, your religion, and the family values that we brought with us." And my parents were very much open to this, and they put us, me and my brothers both went to a Church of England school. We both went to Bible study on a Sunday.
Wow.
And we love that. And it's because my parents wanted us to kind of integrate into the community, wanted not to be, segregated, or they wanted us to understand the culture and the traditions of being a Brit.
Now we've spoken before. I mean, you've come on Dad Chats, and we've had talks before. And I want to, if you don't mind, get into some of the more difficult things that you've had to face being a blind parent, because you have, haven't you? There's comments you've heard, there's responses you've seen, you've had Seema tell you about different sides of it. It's a tough thing, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what? When I kind of started kind of accepting my sight loss, I don't think the one thing I never really thought about is how other people saw me. I never really thought about that. I thought, if you had the white cane, you had a guide dog, you're kind of walking around, people will either give you space or they'll come and help you, because that's what I would
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how I thought everybody was. A bit naive of me, but I thought, it's a big giveaway. You're walking around with a long white cane, you're tapping away. Um, it was, I guess, from the beginning. It was when, even before the kids came along, when people barged me out of the way, pushed me, or I'd say, disabled people or blind people shouldn't ride the trains at peak time because if anything happened, do we help you or do we help ourselves first? You kind of hear comments like that, or why, or things like people think that you live on benefits if you're disabled. Like, oh, I pay for your trainers. Just randomly people coming up to you, oh, they're nice trainers, I pay for those. I'm like, what do you mean? And like, oh, you're, being blind, you live on benefits, you must have your house paid for. I'm like, well, I have a mortgage like everybody else, and I have to work like everybody else.
Awful. Absolutely awful.
But then for every bad attitude, you've got 100 good people out there to help you. But I guess sometimes when you have a bad situation, it kind of sticks in your head, and it buries itself in there, and it kind of, the next time you have a bad attitude, it kind of gets, you kind of think about it more and more and more and more, and you think, oh, is this how people, see me? It's just like as a blind guy walking around, catching a train at 7 o'clock in the morning because he feels like it. But when Abby was born, the first moment actually was when he was born. I actually went from the birthing unit, went down to a coffee shop in the hospital to grab a coffee, and a guy came up to me and said, "Oh, congratulations! You were also in the. He said, I noticed you in the birthing. Said, so I believe you've just had a baby. Blah blah." So we're kind of congratulating ourselves, and he said he's just had a baby as well. So it's like, "Oh, congratulations!" And then he said, "I didn't realize blind people could have kids."
What?
I thought, wow. And I thought, oh, do you know what? He probably just meant it as a joke. Being a doctor, obviously went into quite dramatic detail on how you have kids and everything, and people in
You
the
gave
coffee
him the
shop.
birds and the bees.
Yeah, the full birds and the bees, but in quite a lot of detail as well. And then I can hear people going, "Oh my God, what's he saying?" Because the coffee shop was quite full, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this.
Good for you.
And I told Seema, so we kind of laughed it off. But it was very much when I did the nursery run for the first time, or took my son to rhyme time at the local library, because the local library were really amazing. We've got a really, really nice library just down the road to us, and all the staff know us. And you walk in, they're like, "Oh, hi, Amit." They treat me like everybody, and I love that. I love the fact that it's not, "Oh, how can I help? Oh, there's a bookshelf here. Oh, you're gonna bump into things." They just treat me like everybody else, and I love that. So we had rhyme time at local libraries, and I took my son in, and I had Kika with me, and parents, and obviously at that time I was the only dad in there, and I was the only disabled person in there as well. And the parents would want to talk to the Kika before I'd want to talk to me. And obviously Kika's in harness, she's working, and she's beside me. So we're sat down in a circle, Kika's next to me. And I would have to tell parents that, you can't talk to the dog because you're going to distract her. And she's working. And obviously if she moves around, I can't look after her and Abby at the same time. And people think I'm being rude. And then it got to a point where nobody would let their kids play with Abby. And it just got to a point where you kind of go there and you're the only one in there. And Abby wants to play with everybody else. But every time Abby goes towards a kid, mum would pull her away or pull him away or take him away. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I can't do this because it's just hard work. And Abby's not having fun. So we'd go to the park. And then even in the park, you'd hear parents say, well, his guide dog is looking after him, but how is he looking after his son? What if something happens? And you kind of think, well, you're only about 3 feet away from me. I can hear everything you say.
Awful, absolutely awful. I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
And this is when Seema would say, even the pleasant conversations you'd have with parents, their eyes are rolling because they don't believe what you say, that you can look after a kid and all of this. And you kind of think, well, the parents really think that, the parents really think that, having a disability means you can't be a parent. I'm not the first
Yeah.
blind parent. I'm not going to be the last blind parent. There's thousands and millions of us out there, and we do a great job. But I think it's their fear of how would
Yeah.
they cope if they were in that situation, rather than how is he coping. Because my kids, they don't know any difference, and the first thing I think about is their safety every time I go out and do
Mm.
anything. So, I've got all of that in mind. I know what I'm doing. I'm confident enough to, if I need help, I would ask for help. So I think it's their fears more than my fears that they kind of take out on you. And if they feel, well, they can parent as a visually impaired person, how can he do it? And it's weird that you would go up to a stranger and say things like that. You wouldn't say it to a sighted person. I don't know why you
Yeah,
would say it to
exactly.
a visually impaired
Exactly.
person. I love when people interact with me in a park and they talk to me like a normal parent. I
Yeah.
love that. Do you know what? Because sometimes I've kind of got my guard up and I know someone's approaching me because I can hear them, and I'm thinking they're going to talk about my sight loss, because people, their first question is, have you always been blind, or how did you
Yeah.
lose your sight? Is what people come out with. But when people say, "Oh, I love your kids jump up," I love that. I love talking about normal things. I don't want to talk about my disability or my sight loss or anything. I love talking about what everybody else does, and a lot of people now are confident in going up, approaching disabled people and just having a conversation. So, it's, for me, I think it's getting better.
The thing is, you don't just parent. There's a lot of other things that you've got going on in your life. And I just wanted to touch briefly on a couple of them. You are a trustee at the charity, the Vision Foundation. Now, what do they get involved with? There's a lot of blind people who are unemployed. Is that right?
Yeah. So do you know what the Vision Foundation is? I've literally just become a trustee. It was December last year, and it's a charity that's actually a grant giving charity. So what it does is it will fund projects for other charities, for small communities, for visually impaired people to kind of either get back on track with technology, get a use of technology to get back into employment, with independent living. So it's a charity that works within London, but its main goal, its big focus at the moment, is employment within the visually impaired community. It's something, I think the stats are something like 1 out of 10 visually impaired person is in work. So it's absolutely insane that you can be visually impaired, you can go through mainstream school, college, university, come out with a degree like everybody
Yeah.
else. The moment you put visually impaired on an application form, you kind of get pushed to the back of the line. Um, and that's absolutely insane.
That's crazy. Just 9 out of 10 visually impaired people basically are unemployed because people don't want to hire them yet.
Yeah, because of their sight loss. So Vision Foundation, they're their centenary year at the moment. They want to raise £1 million this year
Wow.
to help get vision people back into the workplace. And we're working with a lot of organizations, a lot of companies, to try and get people to even get a work experience, to get people into and actually take that stigma away.
Yeah.
So it's having sight loss doesn't mean your life is over. For me personally, my life has never ever been this good. I feel the best I've ever felt. I have amazing people around me. I'm confident with my sight
Yeah.
loss. And it's taken a while to get it. I've had plenty of knocks, but those knocks have actually just made me stronger and stronger and stronger, and kind of more willing to kind of carry on. For me, I'm living my best days.
It's so great to hear you talking so positively about the situation. I mean, you're giving back with the charity, the Vision Foundation. It's great that you're in such a positive place. Is that what led you to write a book? Because you've written a book, haven't you, about your whole situation?
Yeah, so writing about the book was hard because it meant thinking about the dark times,
Yeah.
and actually sitting down and actually writing about how I really felt. And the book is very, very honest. It's got the good and the bad and the ugly. It's all in there. And I thought, well, you can only appreciate the good if you understand the bad, and the heartbreak and all the issues you have and all the barriers you had, because that's when you can appreciate the end of it. But it's more of a book, not more, but it's not really about the sight loss journey. It's more about our journey
Yeah.
and about the emotions and and the community around you, and that it's okay to go and ask for help. But the lovely thing is that I wanted to get Anushka into the book. We're about 3 weeks late for the deadline, and I'm like, no, I just have to finish a little bit, and the book literally got sent to the editors the day Anushka was born, because I wanted to put her name in it. So I wanted to put, because I wanted it to be dedicated.
Oh, okay. Well, Dr. Amit, there is one question that we ask all of our Dadvengers who come on the podcast before they go. Okay, and this is a question for you. And I might have to put a stipulation in there, but let's see where you go first. If you could have one dad superpower, what would it be?
Children's whisperer.
Ooh.
When we're young, when we're crying, I want to understand what those cries are. It's as simple as that. I think I can deal with everything else. It's the not knowing.
You know what? You've picked like the same one as me, because mine was like to be able to touch my children and know exactly what they're feeling, or that empathy to just be able to do that. So yours is, children's whisperer.
That's it.
I'm down with that one.
But everything else, I can kind of live with everything else. It's more of an adventure, I guess.
Nice. Very, very well done. Very, very good answer. Very good chat. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure listening to you. Hopefully, I know there'll be loads of people that will get so much from the insight that you've given into being a blind parent, and hopefully it will go towards changing things a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? Don't be afraid to approach disabled, visually impaired people. Sometimes people are just a little bit wary because they're not sure how to approach. Yeah. I think, a lot of people want to interact, and then, but it's that, oh, will I offend that person? Or I'm not quite sure. Do you know, go with your gut feeling. Just go and introduce yourself.
Dr. Amit, thank you so much. I'll see you at Dad Chat soon anyway, mate, so don't worry about that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nigel.
What an incredible story from an incredible dad. And so inspiring to see someone who's gone through such a life-changing experience be so positive. I think if Amit can move forward and be the best dad he can be, we all can. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have time, leave us a review. We'd love to hear what you thought of this episode or of the series as a whole. And don't forget, you can subscribe or follow using your preferred podcast platform to be first to hear the episodes. If you'd like to find out more about Dadvengers, head to dadvengers.com, where you can find out more information about our live chats, about our meetups, quizzes, blog posts, and more. This has been the Dadvengers podcast, sponsored by Tonka, because being tough is all about getting out and playing.